Hello everyone and welcome to Makai-World Reviews. I am the Total Makai, obviously, master of minds and of men. As I said last video, you are getting all of February all at once since I had a bout of illness, as well as my daughter did as well. So I'm going to get all of Mads Mikkelsen month out at once so I can get back on track for next month. This shouldn't be a problem, as who doesn't want more Mads? We go mad for Mads here at Makai-World Reviews. So this video will be about the movie The Hunt. I won't tell you to hit that subscribe button, but you should. And let's go ahead and get into this. Movie is The Hunt, directed by Thomas Vinterberg. Feeling a bit like a noob this month, as I am just not that familiar with Danish and Denmark films. The only other thing I've seen by him was Dear Wendy, which I did not like in the slightest. Lars von Trier is a terrible writer and a worse director. I just want to say that, and he wrote that movie. Written by Mr. Vinterberg. He also co-wrote it with Thomas Lindholm, frequent collaborator with Thomas, so a lot of what applies to one applies to the other, although oddly enough, I have seen an episode or two of Borgen. So whatever. Starring, of course, Mads Mikkelsen, Man of the Month, who is far better of an actor than any Marvel IP would allow you to believe. He's had some stern performances, and I hope this week will show that as well. I'm sure we'll get many more in his long career. And Thomas Bo Larsen, a guy I've seen in other movies with Mads, such as Pusher and Another Round. Yeah, sadly not much else to say about him. Release date was January 10th, 2013. I do go by the Denmark release and not Cannes, as that is not a wide release. What came out around the same time? Parker, a mediocre action film that tries very hard to be better than it is. But with Jennifer Lopez, your leading lady, across from Jason Statham, I'm not sure what anyone really expected. Jason doesn't seem like he likes being an actor, and Jennifer was never good at it. So here you are. And Texas Chainsaw 3D. Oh boy, the Texas Chainsaw franchise has had it harder than most other horror franchises, save maybe Hellraiser. In fact, they put out 2 good movies, then a blitz of garbage. Nothing saves this mediocre attempt at a film, not even the stunning looks of Alexandria Daddario, nor the resurgence of Bill Moseley and Gunnar Hansen Help. Moving to the film, in a small Danish community, we meet Lucas, teacher at local kindergarten where he is loved by students and locals alike. With best friend and neighbor Theo and his daughter Clara as probably the closest people to him save his pup Fanny. He also has a son Marcus, but thanks to a bitter divorce, the son lives mostly with his mother. Theo and his wife Agnes have a fairly strained relationship of sorts, and Claire is often left out in the lurch, wandering off, and Lucas has picked up the slack, acting as friend and surrogate father to her. Though Clara seems to think of their relationship differently, thanks to her waxing and waning home life and the fact her brother's friend exposed her to some pornography, even briefly. She begins to get the wrong idea about Lucas, tempted to give him a heart as a gift, and kisses him on the lips while he is playing with other children. He politely and calmly refuses to accept the heart and explains that kissing the lips is only for her parents at the moment. But this causes Clara to spiral, and when I don't know how to say that woman's name, Lucas's boss questions Clara when sitting in the dark, she gives vague answers about disliking Lucas and that he has an erect penis. Then changes the subject. Of course, this gives Gerthy cause for serious concern. Lucas, without knowing the other shoe is about to fall, seems to be doing rather good in life. He has begun dating Nadja, the cook at his work, much to the cheer of his friends, and Marcus has decided to come live with his dad, much to the chagrin of his mother. Though it's not long before Gerthy questions him, vaguely enough, and then Clara is questioned by a man who feeds her leading questions, seems to enjoy it far too much. Well, it's not long till Theo, his wife Agnes, and the rest of the parents are informed of some kind of impropriety, and given poorly researched pamphlets to help them. The town turns against Lucas pretty quickly, and thanks to Gerthy calling Marcus's mother, Marcus is no longer going to live with his father. Theo wants to believe his friend wouldn't do this, but simply can't choose Lucas over his daughter. Clara tries to visit Lucas, but he has to send her away. Nadja questions Lucas about his innocence, and he breaks up with her. And for some time, he is especially left wallowing alone while more kids come out with stories about him interfering with them. But not for long, as Marcus arrives without his mother's consent, and Lucas's friend Brunn has backed him totally and completely. Marcus does some shopping for him and his dad and is informed by the shopkeep his family is no longer welcome there. and Lucas is arrested shortly thereafter. Marcus attempts to talk to Theo, but lashes out at Clara, and the whole scene ends in fisticuffs. So he goes to Bruns, where a bombshell is dropped. All of the children had the same story. They could all describe Lucas's basement, its wallpaper, its couch color, everything. Except Lucas's house has no basement. So Lucas is released. Charges dropped seemingly, but life does not go back to normal. A rock is thrown through his window. Poor Fanny is killed. The bastards. Lucas sends Marcus away, and Lucas gets into a rather nasty scrap at the supermarket when told he isn't welcome, which involves Lucas headbutting the butcher. Theo and family see him leaving, limping, bloody, and Theo desperately wants to talk to his friend, but just puts his head down. Christmas Eve, Lucas goes to Mass with the whole town, but breaks down crying and attacks Theo, telling his friend he's just done, and there's nothing inside. Later that night, Clara admits to her father Lucas did nothing wrong, that she essentially made it up. Theo takes a bottle of whiskey and some ham over to Lucas's house, and the old friends sit and eat and drink and talk. A year later, things have seemingly returned to normal. Marcus lives with Lucas. Nadja is back with him. He's seemingly accepted by the town. Seemingly. As on a hunting trip with Marcus, a shot rings out past Lucas. He looks to see a man standing in the sunlight, aiming a gun at him, before the man runs off. Let's start where we always do, directing. I think, frankly, and to the point, this was well directed. It wasn't mind-blowing or anything, but it had a rather large cast that felt very natural. This town feels lived in. It's entirely thanks to people pretending to live there. There are lots of ancillary-type characters that feel like people you might meet in a small town. They interact in one capacity or another with the characters, but aren't important enough for plot relevancy. That's a director's job, getting good people for the roles and making sure they understand what they are doing there. I wasn't ever taken out of the movie by the people, and I always praise a director who can get even reasonably acting out of children. And there were a number of children and teenagers in this movie, and they all did their job to the best of their ability, it seemed. This movie's directing genuinely made me want to look into more of Thomas Vinterberg's movies, so yeah, kudos. As far as the cine goes, this is where I'm going to be critical to begin with. It's fine, if not disappointing. The movie doesn't look bad, and it certainly has a small town feel, but I think that thanks to the lack of sets more than it is to any sort of visual interpretation. It's a very basic shoot. Lots of tight shots where people are talking, and occasionally two of them are in a shot. We do get a few nice shots of the woods, but for the most part there isn't much to work with. The pseudo-natural lighting is kind of nice, but ends up being overly bright or just dark. The sets are entirely uninspired, and I think they could have done a lot more with sets to enhance the movie. First off, the whole revelation to Lucas not having a basement could have been foreshadows. We don't know he doesn't have a basement until we were told. We don't know that that's what the kids are talking about until the exact same scene. Could they have not shown us more in depth? We spent a ton of time in his house, but don't really get an idea of its layout. He even walks Nadja through it briefly, and I don't know, an offhand line, no basement or something like that, could have added more. Maybe he did say that, but I don't recall. Not to mention when he is arrested and released, I would have liked to see that more than Marcus and his goings-on. We don't really know Marcus, and it's hard to get invested in him when we know the main character is in jail. What did he experience there? What are jails like there? Anything. Nope. Just back to the places we've been pretty much before. So yeah, I was disappointed, but thankfully it didn't hurt the story in any meaningful or tangible way. Speaking of story, this was not quite as hard of a watch as I imagined it to be, knowing the plot. And I have a daughter. I was expecting it to hit me a little harder, but it was written in a way that kind of deflates a little bit of the tension out of the room. They presented Lucas as being isolated and not knowing what is going on, while everyone else in town knows what's going on. And while we, the audience, know the score, I think doubling down on one of those would have been a better choice. Or other choices. I'd say give us one of these. This is just some of my ideas. One, give us just Lucas, isolated alone. We don't know what's said. We don't know what's going on. It's like Kafka's The Trial. We have no idea what the totality of the crimes are being levied, but we do know he is innocent. We can root for him while waiting for the criminal justice system to work or fail. It will give us that right amount of tension about if the small town will fuck him or if the truth will be revealed. Two, give us just the townsfolk. We don't know if Lucas did it. He's lost his wife. He's lost his son, sort of. He's sort of a recluse. Maybe we follow Theo's family more and the tensions they face when Clara gives this forced account, though they don't know it was coerced. The conflict Theo feels about his friend and the growing unease of the town until Lucas is exonerated, but that tension remains, as is hinted in the movie. This would keep us away from Lucas's mindset. We don't know what he knows. We don't know if he's innocent. 3. Give us Nadja or Marcus's perspective. These characters are woefully underutilized, and when Marcus is used, it's rather disappointing. This way, both these characters are outsiders, either physically or by being for him. We get to see the sides forming, and while they both side with Lucas essentially, neither of them know the total truth. It would be interesting to see Marcus dealing with his mother, running away to see his dad, only be treated so poorly in town, or Nadja, already a slight outcast because she's supposed to be Spanish or something, further pushed to the fringes for her love of a man accused. I don't know, it just felt like we got all sides totally evenly, and it's like, well, okay, either I'm mad because he's fucked over, or I guess I can get over it. There isn't much tension besides the initial fact that he's being lied about. The pacing was just off, especially, and this goes back to my complaint about the sets, Marcus' stuff while Lucas is arrested. It just feels like fluff. We don't get to know any more about Marcus, really. I like the idea of the story. Liked it strong. I respected it. But it just didn't have what side it wanted to take or how it wanted to present that. But let's talk about the characters. Lucas is an obvious first, being our boy Mads himself. Now, Mads is a great actor, and I see what they were trying to do, but it didn't land in a lot of ways, and let me explain what I mean. Lucas is presented as a very soft-spoken, calm individual, but they mention only a few times, oh, he gets walked over, and this leads to him exploding at the grocery store, with the big headbutt, and exploding on Theo, which makes Theo realize his friend is broken. That maybe he wasn't lying, maybe it was a misunderstanding. Problem is, we don't ever really see Lucas getting walked on. He has issues with his ex-wife, but they don't seem any more ridiculous than a lot of divorces I've seen. The kids at work love him. Nadja is pushy, but that's more about her being fiery than anything else. His friends rib him, but are ultimately very kind and close, until the incident. And even with Clara, he says clear boundaries with her. Hell, even after she accuses him, he's kind and polite to her, but still curt with his boundaries. I would have liked to see the man growing more and more tired of what he's being put through and finally just exploding. Finally tired of being tired. But really just kind of got a nice guy who was pushed by being accused and didn't really blow up until he was physically assaulted, which, okay. That being said, his interpersonal relationships were mostly the best part. His stuff with Theo was very genuine and sweet. In fact, him interacting with all of his friends, swimming, hunting, drinking, was a lot of fun to watch. The interactions with the children was wonderful. This is the second film Mads has a personal interaction with kids that I watched this month. And I know he has 2 kids and a grandkid. So it seems like he's wonderful with children. His relationship with Clara confused me a little bit, as he forgives and forgets quite quickly. Nearing the end, he picks her up to help her over something. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have had that. Have him physically interact with her in private like that. I don't know, it rubbed me the wrong way. Like, the appearance of impropriety, you know? Also, who fucking killed Fanny? That doesn't get enough fury. That poor dog. We never find out who did it, and we never get any vindication. Hashtag justice for Fanny. Either way, I think he did the best with the script he was given. Moving over to Clara. This little girl did a great job, about as much as you can imagine a kid doing. She played sweet, callous, and confused all well, and could cry on cue, it seemed. Her character comes from not a broken home, but a tense situation, where she is left out due to dad's drinking and mom's fighting, and obviously those two are combined. She wanders off. She has flights of fancy, and the scene where the brother's friend shows her pornography, I think even if it was briefly, it should have been explored a little more, as that can be terribly traumatizing for a child to see that kind of shit, and they shouldn't be seeing that kind of shit. And it obviously gave her quite the issue seeing that, as then she related the love of a man who cared about her with something far more inappropriate and disgusting. I just think that moment was the catalyst for this whole thing, and it's kind of blown off. In fact, the brother is a non-issue for the remainder of the movie, essentially. There are 2 scenes that I think she really thrived in, Clara. The one where the guy is questioning her with these awfully leading questions, and every time she nods yes to his smut, he gets a big happy grin, and she sees this kind of validation. So she runs with it. It was a gross scene, seeing her being manipulated. And that's not to downplay any sort of actual child abuse. These things need jumped on as quick as humanly possible. But you need the truth. The other scene where she goes to Lucas's house after the accusation, wanting to walk Fanny. Poor Fanny. And she breaks down one question by Lucas, crying, saying she isn't sure what actually happened with everyone, telling what everyone told her happened. It was an important moment where even she is wrapped up in the lies, as a kid might be. And to her dad, Theo, he's probably my favorite character. And I find him the most realistic. He is just a small town guy. He drinks, he loves Lucas very much, he loves his daughter very much. He loves the rest of his family, but man, him and his wife have a strained relationship after all these years. He's a drinker, but he's a good man overall. He shows torment. He is torn between what is being said by his daughter and his friend, his best friend. I don't blame him for believing his daughter. How could you not? Why would you not? Even if she's lying, you have to believe your kid first and figure it out next. He is in two of my favorite scenes in the movie. One where he sees Lucas beaten to shit coming out of the supermarket, and he just wants to talk to him. His heart breaks seeing his friend like that, but he just puts his head down and closes his eyes. Second is actually just something I got a crack out of. When Lucas comes over for like the first time in the movie, his wife is cooking a pie, but then she leaves, so she tells Theo and Lucas not to eat that pie. Of course, they immediately do. It reminds me of the scene from Lisa on Ice in The Simpsons Season 6, Episode 8. Marge is cooking a pie, and she goes, "Homer, don't you eat that pie." Of course he does. And the rest. Nadja was fine. I was confused by her because one playing her is Swedish, but she speaks mostly English in this movie for reasons I can't explain, but she understands everyone else, and she has a tan and an accent, so I get the feeling she is supposed to be Spanish, but they're vague about it. She's there just for added drama, and she's kind of rude to Fanny the first time they interact. Marcus, once again, we see almost nothing but a brief scenes from his POV, and they could have cut it and it wouldn't have changed a ton about the movie. Well acted, but didn't add anything. Would have loved to see more of him, actually. Brun and Girthy, both there just move the plot along. Frankly, both feel kind of shallow. Soundtrack, this was a solid soundtrack. It started with Van Morrison, so I kind of thought we would get more licensed music, but we didn't. What we did get was more than serviceable. It kept going with the pace, never felt out of place. I know music in the fashion that I know what I like, so I've been trying to study more soundtracks to learn about this particular facet, and it's interesting to say the least. But yeah, perfectly serviceable, just like the movie. Overall, looking back, I seem to be very critical of this movie, and that's because it needs it. It dealt with a subject matter that is very serious, and while it did treat it with respect, it made some foibles I needed to point out, both in plot and in pacing. But really, overall, this is a pretty good movie that pulled at my heartstrings a few times. I couldn't really recommend it unless you're looking for a movie like this, and for some reason Law & Order SVU isn't on a marathon on TV, which it always is. Well, that was The Hunt, the penultimate movie in my Mads movie marathon. I won't mess around since episodes are all coming out at the same time, as the next video is going to be the final, obviously, of Mads Month. I'm going to be looking at an interesting, starry one in At Eternity's Gate. This has been the Tona Makai, Master of Minds and of Men, and the only demon who will ever love you. Thank you, and goodbye.